Brilliant, brilliant. Our next speaker is Professor Erin Mabel, so please give her a round of applause.
Watch the time for me because I can speak for Britain. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for asking me to come and speak to you all about my journey. First of all, I'm not a lawyer or solicitor or anything like that, and I was asked already this evening, what firm are you from? I am not from a firm. I'm a community activist, and I must say, I've been a community activist now, for about, maybe 25 or so years. And at first, would I label myself as a community activist? No way. I used to think, no, I am not one of those people that make trouble, because that's all that community activists do, they make trouble. But however, I found out that over the years, that's exactly what I do. So it's necessary trouble, you know, that necessary stirring of the pot. I suppose my journey as an activist started, probably, in the 90s. And it really kicked off when a friend of mine was actually shot in front of me. Otherwise, gun crime, gang crime, it wasn't part of my life. I read about it in the papers, I watched it on the TV. And I must admit, I was one of those people that watched it on the TV, read about it in the paper, and I thought, well, it happens to them. It doesn't happen to people like me, it happens to them. I'm from a very academic family. My parents, and I usually say to people at this point, don't let my Mancunian accent fool you. I'm 100% Nigerian. I'm from Nigeria. All the Nigerians in the house. I'm from the Igbo tribe, the eastern part of Nigeria. That's where I'm from. But I was born and brought up here, in Manchester. But I have also lived, schooled and worked in Nigeria. So yeah, my identity is very, very important to me, as you can see. But it's been something, like I said, we're a very academic family, and if anybody knows Nigerian families, you know that we're all about academics, and usually they give you three options. You'll either be a lawyer, an accountant, or what's the other one? A doctor. A doctor. And I think my activism started from about age 11, because I said I ain't gonna be any of those. But anyway, as I was saying, I used to read about these things happening, and me and my husband were both born in Manchester, moved down to London, better prospects, better jobs, but then ended up moving back up because we wanted to know what is going on in our neighbourhood, because I'm born and brought up in Moss Side, Russia Moss Side, it's my neighbourhood. My husband too was brought up in Moss Side. People that we were hearing that were dying and being shot and murdered, they're children of people that we knew, or there were people that we knew that we'd gone to school with. And sometimes you look at your children and you think, wow, ours is in high school, his is shot. It's like, couldn't understand it. And like I said, it was at the time when a friend of ours was shot right in front of us, and that's a whole nother story. But what happened was, it took 45 minutes for emergency services to arrive, even though I made that phone call. We were treated as perpetrators rather than victims. I was a witness, but I was never treated as a witness. I was treated as a perpetrator. I was told, by CID and whoever those detective people are, that you must know who shot him because, you were there, you live in that area. To me, it's like, that don't mean I know. Like I said, my family, we're not into that kind of stuff. But anyway, long story short, it was one of those things where I just thought, you know what, I'm not standing for this. I am not putting up with this. We were labeled, like I said, we were labeled as gang members. We were labeled as, we knew who did the shooting, because it was in Moss Side. I remember even the phone call I made, and that's another funny story. I made the 999 call that night. Because all these little things is what really spurred me into, really wanting to make change and make something happen positive. I remember I made the 999 call, and the woman on the other end of the phone, I remember she asked me, at first I said, I need an ambulance, my friend's been shot. Are you sure he's been shot? Yeah, he's been shot. How do you know he's been shot? I'm thinking, what do you mean, how do I know he's been shot? I said, well, because some people shot him. Did you see them? Yes. So where are they? I said, well, they've gone. So how do you know he's been shot? And I'm thinking, he's been shot, I need an ambulance. And this conversation goes on and on. And I remember in the end, I got so frustrated and angry with her. I remember saying to her, you know what? I need the fire brigade. She said, you need the fire brigade? I said, yeah, there's a fire. I said, we need the fire brigade. I said, in fact, we also need the army. And we need this and we need that. And I remember saying to her, and you know what? We might just get an ambulance, because I need an ambulance. My friend is dying, on the floor, blah, blah, blah. And the conversation goes on and on. Eventually ambulances do come. But then I tell that story because then what happened was they then wanted to prosecute me for verbal abuse to the call handler.
Sure.
And I was like, I couldn't even remember making the call. To tell the truth, I couldn't remember. I only remember now because they played it back to me. I could hear this irate woman going, yeah, that is me. But then I said to them, but play it back again. She asked me the same question, what emergency services do you want? She asked me the same question about 8 or 9 times. I said, why is she asking me the same question? They said, oh, she couldn't understand your accent. My accent? So I said, well, sorry, she must have been foreign. I've got one of the most northern accents. I said, what do you mean she couldn't understand my accent? But then I realized it was just a ploy for them to want to prosecute, make a prosecution. And I thought, I'm not standing for that. I said, well, you'll be prosecuting somebody else because I'm not turning up, wasn't answering any more questions. I said, I'm not doing it, not playing the games, I'm not in it. And that's what, again, it's one of the things where I thought, you know what, I want to know how they're trained, because professionally I'm a trainer, staff development and training, that's what I do professionally. So I wanted to know, I said, right, you're asking me questions, I want to know how are those call handlers trained? Because you said she was talking to me to keep me calm. She was not keeping me calm. Instead, I just felt she was winding me up, with all the questions. So I wanted to know how your call handlers trained. I wanted to know how the police trained. I wanted to know how, who do we talk to? And I don't want to talk to the people at the desk, I want to talk to the people at the top. So the job I had in London, I'm training managers and senior managers how to do their job. So I'm not afraid to speak, to people with, they used to say, oh, they've got these stripes and that. Till today, I don't know what all the different stripes and blah, blah mean on their shoulders. To me, they're police officers, I just want to speak to a police officer. So anyway, as time goes on, we start interacting with more institutions that totally believe that the gun crime, the gang crime in Moss Side, first of all, it only happens in Moss Side, and those of us that lived in Moss Side knew it didn't only happen in Moss Side, and it was only by young black men. Every young black man who was possibly about 6 foot. So I met a lovely young man today. They wouldn't have blamed you. If you were like 6 foot, a warrior hoodie, I didn't say his name. A warrior hoodie. It was like you were a gang member. And for us, that was really unfair because me and my husband, we have 8 children. 7 of them are boys. And as I can say today, they're all graduates. The youngest just went off to university. He's gone all the way to Newcastle. But anyway. But our boys, we felt, our children are not gang members. Yes, they wear black. Yes, they are 6 foot. But it doesn't mean that they're in a gang and that, they're gang members. And even when they were in school, I remember one day getting a phone call from one of the boys when he was at school, and the head teacher said, oh, I need to come down because of Nathaniel and his gang. I thought, gang? Which gang is it? Gang! I thought, when I get down, I'm going to show him gang about it. So when I got to the school, teacher said, oh, Nathaniel and he mentioned 2 other people. So I said, so where's the rest of them? He said, oh no, it's only those 2. I said, 2 people? You mean Nathaniel and his friends? It's not Nathaniel and his gang. And so I mentioned that because it's narratives like that we then set out that we are going to change. Yeah. We've done a lot of work with schools, and we go into school. On Monday, we're going into another school. We have continuously gone into schools to work not only with the young people, but more so with the teachers, those responsible adults around our young people. Because you know what, if you keep telling the child they can't, they never will. And I have heard a teacher say to a young person, I've heard them say, oh, as for you, yeah, you sit over there, you're going to be in a box before you leave school. And I pulled her up. I said, how dare you? I said, how dare you say that to a child? Oh, well, he never wants to listen. I said, well, it's your job to make him listen. Otherwise, why are you there? What are you there for? So we have continuously, been into schools to change the narrative as to how our children are spoken to, how they are treated, how they are seen. I have sat on umpteen government quangos. I mean, after I left London, I found that every minute I was back in London for some meeting or another down in the Houses of Parliament. And I've sat on different government quangos where we have changed the way that officers are trained. Because with our persistence, like I said, my thing is training anyway. So we have influenced the training of GMP officers, how they're trained, especially their cultural awareness training. We have influenced Ofsted, making Ofsted have a bit more teeth. That if a school is failing our young people, and especially if the school goes into special measures, or if the school gets, unsatisfactory, sorry, get rid of the head. The leader of that team has to go. because you cannot have a person still in that school earning their six-figure salary and children are being thrown out of the school every minute. You're excluding. And no child is a difficult child. In our eyes, no child is born bad. Any unwanted behaviour is learned behaviour. And this is another thing that we were saying, not only to government, but to local and central government, to schools, to the police. We've done so much training and so much work with them, letting them know that stop blaming our young people, and especially our young black children, and making them the scapegoats for issues that we as adults can't deal with, don't know how to deal with, or can't be bothered to deal with. So, we have an easier target. And we said, no, we're not going to stand for that anymore. And guess what? You don't want to talk about black, which is the elephant in the room, we'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. I was labelled one time by a minister. I went down to, it was the day we went for Gordon Brown's book launch. And every time I say this, people always say they're going to go out and buy the book. I wish I had royalties to that book. Because in Gordon Brown's book, he wrote a book called Britain's Everyday Heroes, and chapter 1 is a ring a bell, the first chapter. But anyway, we went down for it, and I remember somebody was asking, because I got the picture with Gordon Brown, and I said to him, well, what picture? I'm chapter 1, I want a picture. And somebody said, oh, who's this woman? Someone else went, oh, she's just this hangry black woman. Yeah. Excuse me? So I went up to her and I said, oh, I hear you want to know who I am. He went, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do. Because you just described me as an angry black woman. And he was a white guy. And you can see from here, it's that way. So I said to him, well, it's okay. I said, that's okay. I said, because I am a woman. I said, and I am a black woman. And I said to him, by God, am I angry? That's why I'm going to tell you why I'm angry, And I've had lots of that over the time with the work that we've been doing. Because, I found myself propelled into an arena that's not my arena. I'm not a politician, I am now, but I wasn't a politician, not interested in politics, not interested in, when they talk about stakeholders, not interested. I'm just interested in what our local people are getting or are not getting, and our local children. That's what I was interested in. So I will talk about the black person in the room, because usually there was only one. It was always me. It was always me. But I didn't mind, because I own it. I am an African woman. I always dress like this, especially when I do something public. I even remember another minister who was then from Manchester in London. Imagine I'm going in to do a talk like this. So usually the room is full of white middle-class men. And I remember he said to me before we went in, he went, Erinma, because you're a northern lass. And now in your head, very quickly, you're trying to compute, what does that mean? So I asked him, I said, what do you mean? He went, you were born up north, innit? I said, yeah, I was born up, because I am born up north. He goes, so you're a northern lass? So I said, yeah, I'm a northern lass. And he went, so what's all this get up for? Get up. And I'm going in to do this talk, and all I could hear in my head was, get up. But I'm one of those, because my mom always used to say to me, that she used to say, you. If somebody says one word, you'll reply with 100 words. Quiet. And so I went up to her and I went, well, you know what? What's all this get up? And he went, this is a shirt and tie. This is called a suit. Shirt and tie. Power dressing. I says, well, you know what? This is my power dressing. And he went, yes, but it can be a bit scary. I said, that's what it's supposed to do. I said, if it makes you lot scared, that's what it's supposed to do. I said, because I'm very comfortable. And I said, I'm very comfortable knowing that you lot are scared of me. I said, that makes me very comfortable. But that reminds me of something that my mum always taught me, because I'm a child of the early 60s. And, when people used to say to us, go back home, go to where you come from. I used to think they meant go back home to the house. When you're 6 or 7, you've got no idea of anywhere else in the world. So when people go back home, So anyway, I remember I used to tell my mum that, they're telling me to go back home, and that's when they first took us to Nigeria. But I remember my mum used to say to us, because again, back then we didn't have the terminology of racism. People didn't talk about racism. People didn't talk about, recently been asked about, what was ED and I like when you was growing up? I said, ED. People were just, we didn't even say racist, they were just horrible. But I remember my mum always taught us who we are, coming back to a bit like your point. She always taught us who we are and what we stood for, that we're Nigerians. And my mum had a very favourite saying she used to say to us. She used to say, come here. You see that gate? The garden path from the gate. She said, you see that gate? Outside, beyond that gate, is Manchester. Inside here, is Nigeria. It is Nigeria. But she used to always teach us who we are, what we stand for. We knew our language, we speak our language, the dress code, everything. And whenever we used to complain to our mom, or whenever I used to complain to her, especially when I started working, you go into a workplace and you're the only, black person. Because I remember even my first proper job, I remember starting with a well-known charity. And I remember the lady asked me, one of the ladies, she goes, oh, who wants tea and coffee? Everybody always has to have this tea and coffee business in the morning. Do you want tea and coffee? And I don't drink tea anyway. I said, oh, I'll have a coffee, please. She goes, well, how do you take your coffee? Do you take it black? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say black. I'm thinking, why shouldn't you say black? Coffee with no milk is black. Oh, but I don't want to offend you. I said, why is that going to offend you? And I remember going home and telling my mum. I remember going home to her and saying, oh, I don't like that workplace. She said, well, I said, because the woman's telling me about she can't say black coffee because black coffee is me and I'm the, I'm and my mom said, look, don't mind them, they are very stupid. And honestly, growing up, that's how we dealt with racism. My mom used to just tell us they are very stupid because they don't know where you're from, they don't know who you are. Now why are you listening to them? And then she always used a thing that she said to me, which has always stuck with me, because when I used to complain certain things to her, she used to say to me, Darimba, don't let, because people used to laugh about my name. Because I don't have an English name, whereas all my siblings, they have English names. I'm the only one that doesn't have an English name. I'm just Erin. And I used to say, why don't I have an English name? She said, are you English? Anyway, well, she always used to say, don't allow someone to use the obvious about you against you. Because then you will end up hating yourself. It's obvious that you're a black woman. It's obvious you're a Nigerian, or it's obvious you're an African, or it's obvious, that you're dull, whatever. She said, or your name is different. She said, it's obvious. So don't allow people to use the obvious about you against you. Because then she said, you'll end up hating yourselves. Because she said, if they don't love you, who else is going to love you? You have to love yourself. Love who you are. Love your name, your culture, your being. And I've always grown with that. And I'm telling you, that has really helped me throughout the years. So yes, when people say to me, oh, she's just this angry black woman, I'm able to go up to her and say, well, yeah, I'm going to own it. I am a black woman. I am black, I'm a woman. And guess what? I am angry. And I was angry at the time because, you're saying all gangsters and all gun crime, it all starts in Moss Side. No, it don't. I was one of those that I was always speaking to the media. I was always on telly, always on TV. But I remember the time when there was a shooting in Hill Green, and some of us, in our team, we were like, yes! Only because. Anyway, I'm not even sorry for anyone that lives in Hill Green, because it's true, there was a shooting in Hill Green. But only because it proved that it wasn't just my side. I remember when I actually went down, I had to, I didn't have to. I went for a meeting with the Home Secretary, who shall remain nameless.
Theresa May.
Work out who it is, yeah. And I remember when she asked me, it was a bit of a long conversation. It was all about gun crime, and then she said, but Arima, where do you think the guns are coming from? Why is she asking me? So I actually did ask her. I said, and you actually think I know the answer to that question? I said, that's why we're here, to ask you. She goes, well, I don't know. I said, well, I don't know. And I remember she said, well, it is your community that's causing the problem. And I said, oh, no. I said, hold on, first of all, don't use the terminology, your community. But she was right in that I just said to somebody, well, in my community, this is it. She said, well, you just said my community. So I said to her, I can say my community. You can't say your community to me. She said, why? I said, because it sounds racist. I said, you just can't say that. I said, unless you're going to define what you mean. I said, you can't say, I know what I mean when I say my community. I said, you don't know what I mean. But I remember she also, I remember we went back and forwards with this conversation where she goes, well, Manchester has a problem with gun crime. And I was like, no, the UK has a problem with gun crime. She says, no, Manchester. And I was like, well, the last time I left this morning on the train, Manchester was still in the UK. So the UK has a problem. And we need to do something about gun crime nationally. I said, we have a UK problem with guns. We do. And I said to her, and it didn't start in Mossad. We don't manufacture guns, we don't have a gun company. Guns are being smuggled into the country, and it's not being done by 14 and 16-year-olds who are the ones running around the streets with them. They're being smuggled into this country somehow, and somehow they're ending up in the hands of our young people. And our young people are getting the blame. I says, whereas we're asking the wrong questions. We should be asking, how are the guns getting into the country? I said, you cut off the supply, then you cut off the demand. I said, but so long as the guns will keep coming in, and you're not willing to look at that, I said, then we will continue to have the issue on our streets. And it took us 6 years to make the government bring gun crime to the top of their agenda. 6 years it took. But finally they did bring it to the top of their agenda, and they did start doing something about it. They did start looking at the borders and the ports and things that are being smuggled in. And that's how now the gun crime went down. They did give the police, because we were saying to them to give the police more powers, the stop and search powers and other powers. We were the ones that influenced the fact that, if you're caught with a weapon, you get an instant 5 years, because we had to be able to tell our young people that there are consequences, And so all those things we were able to put in place, which has made us one of the community, or the community group, being that local, that pressure group on local and central government. We have managed to reduce gun crime by 92% across Manchester. And that's one of our accolades that we really say, yes, we'll own that. Because even the police will tell you that if not for the community group, Charisma, which I lead, which I've set up, one of the founders, if not for us being that pressure group, pushing those buttons, being persistent, standing up for what we know is right and what we should get, differences wouldn't have been made. We wouldn't have had those reductions. So all I can say to people is, because again, people, I know I have all these accolades and that, but we haven't done the work that we've done, and I haven't done what I've done for the accolades. They have come afterwards, and they are very nice. Don't get me wrong. They are very nice, but we've worked hard. Yeah. We've worked really hard over the years from a grassroots level. I totally do believe in bottom up rather than top down, because even now we have in our workplaces, our institutions are even beginning to have an internal look at themselves, and so they should. Because for too long we've not seen people. I mean, I don't know anything about this. You were able to ask who's associate. I don't know anything like that. All I can say is I know for too long SLT, senior management teams or senior leadership teams, they've always looked white, middle class. They haven't really had people like us in there. And even if we want to get in there, they make it extremely difficult. We haven't really had the conversation around racism. It's one of the things that we don't really talk about in this country. We are beginning to talk about it now, and I would say ever since the George Floyd murder, not killing and not accident, murder, I think because people were able to see what racism is, we've now begun to have the conversation. Otherwise in this country, and that's why I mentioned what I mentioned before, that my mum used to say they're very silly. We never had the conversation about racism. And even if we tried, because believe me, in workplaces that I've been in, I have been subjected, to racism. I have been told certain things, by one of my bosses who said, you should be lucky as a black person to have this job and be paid the money on paper. What? And like I said, when I was young, I was really talking about. Now, this is when I was living down south and talking about Gobby Northern, that was me down south. Couldn't tell me nothing without going like this. But we've had to fight hard, and I think what happened over the years, we became comfortable with the uncomfortable, and that's for both black or white people. As black people, we became comfortable with the uncomfortable, to where we don't talk about the issues anymore, because if we talk about it or say certain things, it's turned around on us. I remember somebody saying to me one time, "Oh, you must have an issue with your colour." I don't have an issue with my colour. You have an issue with my colour. I'm fine with my colour. I can't come out tomorrow and be another colour. I can come out, if you said something about my hair, I can come out tomorrow with a different hairstyle, or maybe these days a different wig, But if you say something about my colour, I can't change my colour overnight. I don't have an issue with my colour. But over the years, I've found there are some people in some workplaces and in some institutions that they do have an issue with my colour. Even in government, because like I said, I've been delving into that, even there. I will let them know I'm proud of who I am. I know who I am. You don't know who I am, and it's better that you ask me, so that we can stop being uncomfortable are comfortable with the uncomfortable. And it's the same even for our white counterparts. Many of them, they see what is uncomfortable, but they become comfortable with it. And you know why? Because it's a difficult conversation to have. And it is a very difficult conversation. But each of us, we have to make it easier for the other person to be able to ask those questions, those difficult questions. But we have to be willing to answer as well those difficult questions, because it can't be easy. It's my time. Oh. All right. You know, we have, that means they're not listening. But you know, it is a difficult conversation. It's a very difficult conversation, especially if you've never had the conversation. It's a difficult conversation. But one thing I always encourage people to do, because I chair another organisation called We Stand Together, one of the things we do is we facilitate difficult dialogue. And I always say to people to ask those difficult questions. Usually when I do my talks, I do a lot of public speaking, and I say to people, you know what, I don't do political correctness. Don't believe in it. I think it's a load of rubbish. And all it does is stops people from actually saying what they really want to say. And even if it's going to be offensive, I'd rather hear it. I'd rather hear it, because guess what? Then I can educate you. I can educate you. Rather than you go away presuming and assuming, because then I never know really what you're thinking, or the way you're behaving towards me, I'm not really sure what that is. But I always encourage people to ask questions. Ask the question. So you ask that question though for understanding. Because if you ask the question for understanding, when we understand why somebody's different from us, or wears their hair differently, or dresses differently, speaks another language, or why I describe myself as a Nigerian born in Britain, when we can ask those questions and we really understand where that other person is coming from, whether it's about their race, their gender, their religion, sexual orientation, then we can have real and true appreciation and respect for that other person, for how they describe themselves, how they want to be. Because it's not about how I want to see you. I might see you in a particular way, but it doesn't mean I'm correct. After we have a conversation, I can then begin to understand, oh, okay. Might not agree with it, but guess what? It's not for me to agree with. If that's how somebody wants to identify or be like, or what they believe in, that's up to them. But it just helps me to understand. And then I don't put my foot in it, or I don't say certain things or behave in a particular way, when certain topics come up, and then want to just brush it off as if it's nothing, and why are they being bothered, and why are they fussing? It's about having those difficult conversations, and for us to stop being comfortable with the uncomfortable, because we've done that for far too long. And we need to now put that down, and we need to come out and shine and be who we are, and talk about whatever we want to talk about. Because then it makes, for me, I would say it makes the community space, communities, neighborhoods, the workspace, it makes it a more pleasurable place to be. When you can just be. You can be who you are. I'm not saying break all the rules, that's what activists do. You can just be who you are in that space and be comfortable and be respected for who you are and for what you are and what it is you want to do. Yeah.